Deep. Very serious.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ed, not AI. And if you've been paying attention during my Ed Talks, then you should know that by now I am in the camp of people who believe Wendi Adelson was involved in the murder of her ex-husband, Dan Markel. I remember watching Mentor Lawyer's video back in 2019 or 2020, his top 20 reasons why I think Wendi Adelson was involved video, and I agreed with the conclusions he made in that video. The signs are there. There is a lot of smoke. Where there is smoke, there usually is fire. Now, we have to acknowledge that we're about 11 years removed from the murder. Wendi first became a suspect, supposedly, in 2016, along with the rest of her South Florida family, Harvey, Donna, and Charlie. But she has avoided arrest and has instead helped the state secure the convictions of those other 3 South Florida Adelson family members. Many wonder if she is next, if the state used her for all these years only to charge her after everyone else was convicted. Well, everyone except Harvey, but he's quite old, so we'll just set him aside. Many believe, like me, that Wendi was involved. Some think she was the actual mastermind. Others think she knew and approved but was not directly involved. And a few believe that Wendi is innocent, that she had nothing to do with the murder, that she is the damsel in the family, and that Donna or Charlie or both did the murder to take care of her for Wendi's well-being. During the Donna Adelson trial, we saw some new evidence that suggests at a minimum that she knew that her family was making plans to get rid of their North Florida problem, Dan Markel. New evidence against Wendi included Charlie sending Wendi a photo of himself with his new girlfriend, Katie, around the time when Charlie approached Katie about whether she knew someone who could hurt a bad guy, i.e. Dan Markel. And her older brother Robert Adelson's testimony that Wendi bizarrely sent him pictures of Wendi with Jeff Lacasse and then told him that Jeff was a secret boyfriend, asking him not to reveal anything about him to their parents. The photo text was also around the time Wendi abandoned the purchase of the Tallahassee home, and the secret boyfriend conversation happened just days before the murder, a murder for which many suspect that Jeff was an intended patsy or at a minimum distraction for the cops. There is no evidence against Wendi from after the bump operation in South Florida in 2016, other than indirect evidence that Wendi was helping her family obtain information about the charges against Sigfredo Garcia before his probable cause affidavit became public, and that she was eliciting the help of friends like Sarah Youssef to make statements on behalf of the family about their innocence. The vast majority of the evidence about Wendi's involvement and or prior knowledge comes from her behavior and actions in the days leading up to the murder, such as her avoidance of Dan Markel for weeks until that morning, where she engaged with him supposedly to set up a meeting right after the shooting, such as driving to the crime scene, in the interrogation room, such as calling her mom from the interrogation room while being recorded to give her the bad news on a call that seemed staged. So far, however, there is no evidence that has been made public suggesting that Wendi A. helped pay for the murder, B. hired the hitman, C. planned the hit, or D. provided updates to the co-conspirators to help guide them to Dan or to provide a deadline by which the murder had to be committed. There is a ton of evidence that the murder was done, at least in part, because of the post-divorce litigation. We agree with the state that the main motive was to win the war against Dan Markel on the non-negotiable relocation. But there are indications that the murder plan was accelerated to prevent the redeposition of Wendi, prevent the court ruling on the motion for sanctions and contempt against Wendi, and to prevent other adverse rulings in the post-divorce litigation, including a request to limit Donna's visitation of the children. The timing of the withdrawal of Kristen Adamson as the attorney for Wendi Adelson in early May is certainly suspicious. It happened about 1 month before the first attempt to kill Dan Markel in early June of 2014. Kristen's withdrawal does not make a lot of sense. Kristen claimed that she had to withdraw because Dan was also seeking sanctions and contempt against her, and because she had to testify as a witness and therefore could not be an advocate as well. Yet, Kristen testified that Dan Markel's motions were virtually meritless and unethical, questioning the ethics of the attorneys who put their signatures on the papers that she claimed were drafted by Dan Markel. So, why did she withdraw when she did? Was this at the request of Wendy or Donna? Is it that easy to get her to withdraw, just file some false, laughable accusations? Kristen withdrawing resulted in the cancellation of Wendy's deposition and the cancellation of the hearing on the motions. But even if the Adelsons pushed for Kristen to withdraw, and so far we've not seen any evidence of that, this does not mean Wendy specifically was involved. Someone might have gotten that accomplished with or without Wendy's help, without Wendy knowing that it was done, because there was a pending hit, and that would eliminate all of these problems. There is a lot more evidence suggesting Wendy's knowledge and or involvement. 26, in fact. 1. Statements to Lacasse about prior efforts by Charlie to hire a hitman. 2. Repeating the hitman joke that morning to the Best Buy repair guy and the TV being broken and serving as an alibi. 3. Donating old boys' clothes to a friend the day before the murder. 4. Being added to the lease at the South Beach apartment before the murder. 5. Being photographed with the middleman, Catherine Magbanua, at the beach between the first and second hit attempts. 6. Taking a longer route to a liquor store to buy the bullet bourbon, which route that took her to the crime scene just a couple of hours after the murder. 7. The timing of the breakup with Lacasse. 8. The apparent efforts to frame Lacasse. 9. Wendy's cold feet type behavior around Lacasse during the first trip by the hitman, which ended up being canceled. 10. Cancellation of the purchase of a Tallahassee home around the time the hit was being turned into a real plan through Katie. 11. Having a conversation with her boys for the first time ever about death just a couple of days before the murder. 12. Wendy's questions to Lacasse about whether children of her son's ages will remember things happening to them at their then current ages. 13. Wendy's avoidance of personal contact with Dan Markel between the failed first trip by the hitman and the second trip when the hitman succeeded. 14. Risking a call to her parents from the interrogation room to give them the bad news, plus the fact that the call sounds staged, as if Donna and Wendy discussed how Donna should react when Wendy would inevitably call around her friends to notify her mom of what happened to Dan. 15. Wendy's lie about laryngitis as the reason why she was avoiding Dan, and her efforts to contact Dan on the morning of the shooting to set up a meeting, as in trying to be in his head and confirming that he was not with the kids. 16. Changing the boys' names to Adelson. 17. Saying on a podcast less than 1 year after the murder and before any arrest that Dan was likely killed by professional killers. 18. Calling Dan Markel her, quote, latex husband during the podcast. 19. Telling others, Jane McPherson and Robert Adelson, just days before the murder, information that would make them want to report Jeff Lacasse as a suspect. 20. Wearing an owl shirt on the day of the murder. Owl as an omen of death, plus Dan was killed by Tato, which in some languages means owl. 21. Meeting with the child psychiatrist on the day of the murder for lunch. 22. Her fake-looking behavior in the interrogation room. 23. Confirming Dan Markel's schedule for July 18th, 2014 ahead of time. 24. Deleted the "so sweet" text to Charlie on the day of the hit. 25. She moved to South Florida right after the murder. And 26. She arguably helped distract the cops on day of the murder by her actions, words, and behavior. There may be more that we do not know that hasn't been released by the prosecutors. At all trials so far, it seemed that the jurors believed that Wendy was involved. However, at those trials, Wendy was not represented by counsel, and she was not there to confront the witnesses and evidence against her. For example, someone approached Mentor Lawyer this week to ask him to watch a video from some lady who claims that the hit was to be done by the 18th because Dan Markel was about to drop a bomb in the post-divorce litigation against Wendy. Yet, prosecutors never even elicited this information from the witness who has been discussing this issue in the media. Could it be that this witness is greatly exaggerating the information he has to bring attention to himself? Would Wendy easily defeat the logic of this argument in court by showing flaws in the arguments being made in the court of public opinion? The state is currently considering whether to bring charges against Wendy, perhaps whether to present the case to the grand jury. The state may have more evidence in its possession that A, points to Wendy's involvement, or B, helps explain away some of the evidence listed above that seems to suggest Wendy was involved or knew about the hit. At Deep Dive True Crime, we only hope that the state makes the right decision in light of all the evidence. While we want full justice for Dan Markel, we also do not want his children to suffer further the case against Wendy, if the case against Wendy is questionable at best. Let's hope the state gets it right. Written with the great Mentor Lawyer's help, I'm Ed, not AI, Deep Dive True Crime.
Deep. Very serious.
Thank you for watching today's Deep Dive. If you found this case interesting or have any thoughts, feel free to leave a comment below. Remember, this community thrives on smart and respectful discussion. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay on track with our new case videos. We cover new details, court hearings, interviews, interrogations, and more. This is Maya with Deep Dive True Crime and Mentor Lawyer Justice Network, and I'll see you all in the next video.